The order, we start with questions. Secretary of State for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, George Bobbern.
Question number 1, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We are committed to supporting coastal communities, and that's why between April 24 and March 26, over £600 million has been invested into protection from sea flooding, tidal flooding and coastal erosion.
Bobbern.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Sovereign Harbour in Eastbourne, we understand, is the only marina of its kind in Europe where thousands of residents, rather than the government, have to cover the cost of sea defences through an annual charge. The charge this year increased by 16%, way more than inflation, and poor transparency on why. So will the Minister meet with me and representatives of the amazing Sovereign Harbour Residents Association who are in the gallery today to hear more about the issues with the harbour charge and to help us secure a fairer arrangement?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr Speaker. So the annual sea defence charge is a legal obligation placed on property owners in Sovereign Harbour in 1988, so introduced under Thatcher, unchanged under the Coalition, and this contributes to the maintenance of the harbour and the local sea defences. On the south coast between Pensivie Bay and Eastbourne, we've spent nearly £5 million this year and are planning on invested over £100 million over the next decade. Of this £5 million, 400,000 comes from the rent charge in 26-27, and we've also secured record funding of £1.4 billion for over 600 flood schemes across all regions in England.
Matthew.
Number 2, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As outlined in our manifesto, this government is committed to bringing an end to the use of snare traps. We set out this commitment in our animal welfare strategy, and we're actively looking to bring a ban on snares into force as quickly as possible.
Matthew.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I and many others in my constituency of Melksham and Devizes, no doubt across all England, welcome the new animal welfare strategy for England, particularly the banning of snares, which are indiscriminate and cruel. What progress is being made in protecting hares during the breeding season and on delivering the pledge to consult on ending trail hunting where this is used as a cover for illegally killing foxes?
I thank him for his interest in this, and I share his view that he outlined that the use of snare traps is cruel and indiscriminate. On hares, we are looking and consulting on whether we can introduce a closed season for those. Thank you.
Oh, let's go. Sean Barrett.
Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'd like to take the opportunity to congratulate the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, on the excellent progress made on reducing air pollution in London, which was recently identified as one of the 19 leading cities in reducing air pollution. Communities across England will benefit from cleaner air thanks to our actions to tackle fine particulate pollution, which harms public health and is linked to asthma, lung conditions and heart disease. And we will deliver this through modernising industrial permitting, exploring tighter standards for new wood-burning appliances to protect public health, and increase communication of air quality information.
Sean Barrett.
I thank the Minister for her answer. I published the Clean Air Human Rights Bill, also known as Ella's Law, this month, alongside the Ella Roberta Foundation, Mums for Lungs, Clean Air for London, Asthma and Lung UK and Global Action Plan. Together we affirmed the right to breathe clean air as a fundamental human right. So does the Minister agree the government should include this vital life-saving legislation in the upcoming King's Speech so as to give clean air the statutory momentum it requires?
Thank the Honourable Lady and pay tribute to Rosamond and the campaigning that she has been doing on this for years. And of course I support the objectives of improving and cleaning up air pollution and how important it is to public health. And that is why we're already taking action to deliver those meaningful improvements on air quality through commitments and actions that are set out in the Environmental Improvement Plan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In Warwick and Leamington, the Minister will know that we've suffered extreme chemical pollution in the atmosphere from berry polymers. More recently, we've got an application from Bellway Homes that's proposing to dump the equivalent of building waste of an Olympic-sized swimming pool each day that this development will be built, which will be several years. The common theme here, Minister, is of course the Environment Agency. So will she agree to meet with me and the Environment Agency urgently to resolve this pressing issue?
I thank my honourable friend for raising this, and I know how important it is for him and his community to see that we clean up our rivers, lakes and seas, and he's been campaigning on this for a very long time, and of course I'd be delighted to meet with him.
Dave McKellar.
Thank you very much. Question number 4, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Government recognises the importance of wholesale markets for the customers and communities they serve. We have limited recent evidence, however, of the impact that public ownership of markets has on food security.
Mr Speaker, a number of us in London are concerned about the City of London's proposal to put through a private bill to relinquish its responsibility for providing the fish and meat markets Billingsgate and Smithfield. A lot of constituents rely on Billingsgate to enable them to be able to sell and buy fresh fish. It's important for our restaurant industry as well. Does the government have any position on the City of London's position, and how are we going to make sure that we can protect these food markets so that we don't see a diminishment of the opportunity to have fresh food in London?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We recognise Billingsgate's importance as a distribution hub for fish across the UK and will continue to monitor the proposed transition closely. We are engaging with the City of London Corporation about the proposed changes. I recognise Billingsgate's importance as a distribution hub across the UK and will continue to monitor the proposed transition closely.
Jim Shannon.
Mr Speaker, thank you. Can I thank the Minister very much for her response to the Honourable Lady. She always brings forward interesting matters for this House to consider. I always, following on from what the Honourable Lady has referred to, always underline the importance of farming food, fishing food in Northern Ireland, and that the impact of public ownership of markets in any way in Northern Ireland wouldn't impact upon us either. So can I ask the Minister very, very respectfully and genuinely, has the Minister had the opportunity to discuss these matters with the relevant Minister in Northern Ireland to ensure that nothing will happen to us similar to what the Honourable Lady has said might happen in London?
Mr Speaker, all I can do is express my admiration at the honourable gentleman's capacity to get something, and ingenuity as well, to get something into order in this context. I mean, it gives a new meaning to the London Irish.
It's so bad, even I didn't mention Chorley Market, and as wonderful as it is. Right, Tim Farron, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you very much. On the topic of food security, only 55% of Britain's food is actually produced in Britain. So food security should be a much bigger priority for this government than it clearly is. Has not Donald Trump's war in the Middle East, Putin's war on Ukraine, all the other global shocks woken the government up to this? And yet England is now the only country in the UK, the only country in Europe that does not financially support farmers to produce food. Isn't this recklessly foolish? Will she amend the farm payment scheme to change it?
Yes, markets and local markets are extremely important, particularly to maintain food supply locally, and I'm very interested in seeing what we can do to assist. Most markets are actually owned and operated by local authorities now. I think that only the Garden Market Authority is the only wholesale market that DEFRA still looks after. I recognise his comments on food security, but this country is 67% self-sufficient in food at the moment, 77% if one takes away things we can't grow, like mangoes and bananas. Nobody's complacent about that, and we are looking very closely. This is something that the new Farming and Food Partnership Board is going to be looking at, and the first sectoral look we're going to have is at horticulture.
Colm Anderson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question 5.
Secretary of State.
Mr Speaker, I set out further details of the 2026 SFI offer at the NFU conference last month. We are streamlining action and reducing complexity so more farmers can access funding. The offer will be simpler and fairer, with priority access in June for small farms and for farms not already in receipt of ELM agreements.
Colm Anderson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I was pleased to welcome my right honourable friend to Ascot Fields, a great small family farm in the Buckingham and Bletchley constituency, for a rural summit where she'll know that the SFI came up frequently. Can she set out a few more for the House of the steps that she's taken to ensure that farmers with SFI 23 and countryside stewardship mid-tier agreements that are expiring this year can move on to SFI 26 without losing any support?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was a pleasure to meet with him at the local farm in his constituency and other farmers from Buckinghamshire, as he says, at our Rural Summit, where we discussed SFI and other issues. Mr. Speaker, our government at the end of last year decided to extend expiring mid-tier agreements. I understand that farmers are concerned about a gap in their support, and we're looking to see what we can do to fix that problem.
Sir Julian.
I'm pleased to hear that answer, Mr. Speaker, because farmers across Skipton and Brisbane are really concerned about the fact that, having recently signed mid-tier agreements, that they won't be eligible for the new SFI window. And I think if she could push further on that and try to find a way through, certainly farmers in North Yorkshire would be extremely grateful.
I thank him for his very thoughtful question, and I've heard this from farmers in different parts of the country. I know it's an issue in his constituency. As he said, we are looking to see what we can do, because we know that there are many whose agreements are expiring towards the end of the year, and the second window will open in September. So the intent is there, but we've got to make sure that we've got the systems in place to enable that to happen.
Shadow Minister Robin Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So here we are. After stop, start, chop, change, the government is finally working on the rollout of the new SFI scheme, which will be launched this summer. But it comes with lower payment rates for key environmental delivery measures, a £100,000 cap. We learn that thousands of upland farmers are going to actually be excluded altogether, and those on historic agreements will still be locked in and unable to apply. Farmers are already struggling as a result of rising costs, the family farm tax, and choices that this Labour government is making. So what focus is the Secretary of State giving to ensuring effective delivery of the scheme? And what does she say to the many farmers that I have spoken to that actually say that the new SFI creates more cost, more risk and less reward for our farmers?
I respectfully disagree with his analysis. We are simplifying the SFI precisely because we want more farmers to benefit from it. At the moment, 25% of SFI funding goes to just 4% of farms, and we don't think that is right. So we're simplifying the scheme so it's easier and less costly to administer. We've got new leadership at the RPA, as he will know, and the cap that he talked about only affects a tiny, tiny minority of those already with the agreement. He can keep shouting at me from a sedentary position, but I cannot actually talk and listen, believe it or not. So I would say this: there are a record number of farmers in our schemes, unlike under the previous government, where they failed to get the money out the door.
Shelley Joyce.
Question number 6, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
I thank him for his question. We're negotiating an SPS deal with our closest trading partner, the EU, to reduce barriers and cut friction, costs and delays at the border for businesses. Last week, I launched a call for information to understand how best we can support businesses to make the best of this opportunity.
John Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, various farming organisations have expressed their concern about the potential negative impact of dynamic alignment with the EU. CropLife's report suggested that immediate alignment could cost British farming £800 million in year one, could see wheat production reduced by more than 15%. Can I ask the Secretary of State what she is doing to work with Cabinet Office colleagues to ensure they understand the potential negative impacts of an SPS deal so that we don't sell out our farmers like you did with the fishing industry?
This is about making it easier for farmers and other food processors in the food chain to export to our biggest export market. And I can reassure him, I know he's an assiduous member of the EFRA Select Committee, I can assure him that we're in touch with the NFU and others about the negotiations, which are ongoing. I can't provide a running commentary of them. But as it was set out in the common understanding between the UK and the EU, there will be a number of exceptions, and we do want to see a smooth transition to the new system.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. These negotiations are critical to UK fisheries, and I wonder if the Secretary of State has any plans on how she's going to keep this House and the fishing sector updated, and perhaps she or one of her colleagues would attend the Fisheries APPG to ensure that we are up to date on all of the developments.
We're keeping all different sectors within that are affected by the agri-food deal in touch, but I recognise her work, particularly with the fishing industry, and my colleague, the Farming and Food Minister, would be very happy to attend and talk to her APPG.
Chair of the Select Committee, Alistair Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, there are real opportunities to be had by the completion of an SPS agreement, but those who import fresh produce, in particular citrus fruits, are concerned that actually the position with regards to imports from countries outside the European Union will become more difficult and more expensive as a consequence. Can I encourage the Secretary of State to engage more vigorously and in greater detail with the Fresh Produce Consortium, who brought these concerns to my desk recently?
My honourable friend is more than happy to meet with them. As he said, there's a big prize here, because we do more trade with our nearest trading market, and there's been significant delays, as he knows, at the border, administrative costs, which means that the export of fresh produce is very, very difficult, and in some sectors like shellfish it's become almost impossible. So I think we've got to keep our eyes on the prize. I understand the point that he's making about produce from other non-EU countries. That is something that we're engaging with as well, but as I said, my honourable friend is happy to meet the group that he mentioned.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Speaker. Well, I very much appreciate the determination of this government to get an SPS agreement with the EU, which will bring down costs both for our Welsh farmers exporting meat and for our consumers. But Llanelli has a long tradition of cockle gathering, but exports of unprocessed shellfish were stopped by the Tories' ill-thought-through Brexit deal. So can the Secretary of State please update us on any progress in respect of the export of shellfish?
Here.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question. A successful SPS deal will bring huge benefits to the shellfish industry, which were, as she said, very, very badly affected by the botched Brexit deal that we inherited from the last government.
Shadow Minister Dr Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Stakeholders have expressed alarm as to why the government's guidance for businesses on the UK-EU SPS agreement published last week has legislation in scope on the use of hormones in livestock, including bovine somatotropin. The use of growth-promoting hormones in livestock and the use of bovine somatotropin are rightly banned in the UK and EU because of serious animal welfare issues and public health concerns. Bovine somatotropin is linked with a 25% increase in mastitis in cows. For the sake of animal welfare, can the Minister give a clear assurance that the UK will maintain our bans on hormone-treated beef, ractopamine-treated pork and bovine somatotropin dairy, and that none of these standards will be weakened or traded away in these EU SPS negotiations or in trade deals with other countries? And can she confirm if the Animal Welfare Livestock Exports Act 2024, which ended the export of live animals for slaughter or fattening, will be retained in this reset?
Dr Hudson, I have the greatest respect. You've more knowledge than anyone in this chamber. But what we can't have is 5 questions. You know, I've got to get somebody else in.
I don't know which question to answer. Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I just reassure him that as a government we're absolutely committed to maintaining high animal welfare standards, and that, as we made clear to the United States when we were doing the deal with them, that we will not tolerate hormone-treated beef and other products.
David Smith.
7, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. On Tuesday, I was delighted to announce the biggest ever flood programme, investing £1.4 billion across 26 and 27 for over 600 flood schemes across all regions in England. The government is investing at least £10.5 billion to 2036 to build new flood schemes, strengthen existing defences, and this record funding will protect 900,000 properties over the next decade.
David Smith.
Mr Speaker, can I warmly welcome the funding just announced, including in my constituency affecting Budle Bay, Belford and along the Coquet River. The National Flood and Coastal Erosion Risk Assessment says that 1 in 4 homes though, are projected to be at risk from flooding by 2050. So can I ask my right honourable friend if she can give us further assurances about what the government will be doing on an ongoing basis to address these concerns?
I thank my honourable friend, and I know how much he cares about this issue. And as well as announcing the biggest ever major flood investment, we are also changing the flood and coastal erosion funding policy. And as part of these changes, at least 20% of future investment will be set aside to help the most deprived communities. And the reforms will make it quicker and easier to deliver flood defences and ensure that deprived communities continue to receive vital investment, as well as investing at least £300 million in natural flood management over the next 10 years.
John Glenn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Salisbury has benefited enormously from investment in the River Park scheme, which has alleviated flood risk to the centre of Salisbury. But my attention now turns to the villages and the role that farmers and agricultural land can play in dealing with flood defence effectively, but the consequential impact it has on food supply. Could the Minister say something about how she views the role of farmers as part of a collaborative approach to flood defences?
I thank the right honourable gentleman, and he raises a really important point, because quite often we find that flooding farmland is sort of sometimes used to protect villages and rural communities. So it's something I've been thinking about the best way in which we can take this forward after meeting a farmer myself when I went out to Somerset, and I could see the extensive flooding that he had right across his land. We've put £91 million into internal drainage boards, which is obviously the most money ever that we've gone in there to try and support farmers in draining that agricultural land, but it is something I'm actively considering and having conversations about at the moment.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government is taking strong action to improve access to good, nutritious food. We have extended eligibility for free school meals to 500,000 more children. Free universal breakfast clubs are being introduced across the country, and we are reforming crisis support through the introduction of the Crisis and Resilience Fund.
Mr. Speaker, the Right to Food UK Commission launched last November and is currently gathering vital evidence from policy experts and those with lived experience of food poverty from across the UK. Next week we are in Aberdeen and Cardiff, and I'd like to put on record my thanks to my right honourable friend for the positive meeting that we had last week on the Right to Food Commission. But will the Secretary of State commit to meeting with me later this year upon the publication of the Commission's legislative roadmap, so we can work together to ensure that the right to food is finally committed into law and we tackle the scourge of hunger together in our communities?
I thank my honourable friend, and I certainly welcome the opportunity to discuss his work in this area. We agree on the importance of the problems that the Commission is looking to resolve and look forward to seeing the final report. The Government is working across departments to improve access to healthy and affordable food. We've already introduced the junk food ad ban, mandatory targets for healthier food sales from our food industry, and we are committed to breaking the link between obesity and poverty.
So Desmond Swade.
This'll wind up, Mr. Speaker. They'll be asking for collective farms in this socialist paradise next. Has the Minister made any assessment of the impact that a right to food will have on the public purse once our activist judges get hold of it?
Hey, Des, let them eat cake.
I have to say that a study of history demonstrates that collectivising the food system doesn't usually work.
Let them eat cake. Question number 9, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Rising input costs, including fertiliser, have contributed to pressure on many farm businesses in recent years. We continually assess how global cost volatility affects farm productivity and the resilience of the sector.
Christian Jolly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Edinburgh West may not seem like the most rural constituency, but we do have several critical agricultural businesses in the seat, including the Royal Highland Centre at Ingliston, and a number of businesses which are diversifying into agritourism. Yes, there is funding available, but often it's not clear how to get it or how to align it for, say, conversion of buildings. So can the Minister commit to making it clearer how these agricultural businesses who want to diversify can access the funding?
Well, I would love to if it was in England, Mr. Speaker, but agriculture has devolved, and therefore she must ask the Scottish Government.
Stone.
Question number 10, please, Mr. Speaker.
The Government's Good Food Cycle sees alternative proteins as a major opportunity, not just for the economy, but for health, sustainability and food resilience. We are backing the sector and working with the Food Standards Agency on novel food programmes to accelerate precision fermentation technology.
I thank the Minister for the response. The cultivated meat sector could bring in billions of pounds to the UK economy and help increase food chain security. There's companies like Oxton Farms which are leading the way in this, genuinely world leading. Will the Minister support growth in this industry and meet with me and Oxton Farms to see how we can do it better?
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to meet my honourable friend and congratulate the company he has in his own constituency leading the way in this area. We have a major national hub for plant-based, cultivated and fermentation-based research and development. We're at the forefront of progress in this exciting new area.
Monica Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 11, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said previously, but it is always worth reiterating, on Tuesday I announced the biggest ever flood programme of £1.4 billion investment into 26-27, and over £1 million of that is going into projects in Esher and Walton constituency.
Monica Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Thames runs down the length of my constituency of Esher and Walton, making flooding a significant issue. The Thames Ditton Flood Group have brilliantly secured funding for temporary flood barriers, but cannot deploy them because despite their efforts, they are unable to obtain public liability insurance. Despite contacting Floodry, Bieber and the local flood authority, there is no viable public liability insurance. They've explored and exhausted all leads provided by the EA. So what would the Minister suggest to the Thames Ditton Flood Group to enable them to get insurance so they can actually use the flood barrier?
I thank the Honourable Lady and pay tribute to all the flood groups up and down the country and those volunteers who do so much to add to our flood resilience. If she wants to write to me about that specifically, I'll have a think about which agency would be the best one to help, because what we want to do is enable more people to help with our flood resilience and response and not make it too difficult for them to do so.
Legal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the Minister knows that good progress has been made by my flooding task force on Sandon Road in Stafford, we've cleared the brook and there's a planned installation of a non-return valve. A long-term fix will likely require government investment. So could the Minister please say a little more about the new schemes and how new schemes like mine can access some of this funding?
I thank my honourable friend, and I was delighted to go and visit her constituency, speaking to some of the people who've been impacted by flooding and going to see the area for myself. And she's been a formidable champion on the issue of flooding as well. So, of course, continue to have those conversations to make sure we do everything we can to protect the most people possible from the devastation of flooding.
We come to topical Sally Jemison.
Number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I launched the Land Use Framework, a blueprint for how we can make the most of our land. We will shortly be publishing our Waste Crime Action Plan to give the Environment Agency police-style powers to crack down on these criminal networks. Earlier this week, we announced more than 600 flood defence projects. Earlier this month, I led the first agri-food trade mission to Washington to promote the new 13,000-tonne beef quota. I also took part in the second UK-Ireland summit alongside the Prime Minister and other members of the Cabinet. Next week, I will chair the first Food and Farming Partnership Board. And today, Mr. Speaker, we're opening the King Charles III England Coastal Path, which I'm sure all across the House will agree is a wonderful achievement.
Sally Jemison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask the Minister what assessment she has made of agricultural cooperatives and how they might contribute to government objectives around sustainable farming and food security?
I thank her for that question. This Labour government is committed to doubling the size of the cooperative and mutual sector as we laid out in our manifesto. We already have some very successful agricultural cooperatives such as Arla and Open Field, which benefit the farmers in those cooperatives and their local communities.
Shadow Secretary of State Victoria Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Consumers and farmers believe that a Union Jack flag or a Made in Britain label should mean that the food was made or grown in the United Kingdom. Now, we Conservatives, led by my right honourable friend for North East Cambridgeshire, consulted on this flag loophole before the election, and we will close the flag loophole when we're back in government. But can I offer some help to the Secretary of State? Can I offer some help to the Secretary of State? Because we've been very pleased to help her with her fly tipping policies this week. I'm pleased to see she's adopted some of our policies to tackle fly tipping. Will the Secretary of State now adopt another Conservative plan and close the flag loophole?
I think she had 14 years to do what she's just talking about.
The Secretary of State has had this sitting on their desk for 18 months, but instead we've had 18 months of damaging the rural economy, damaging rural businesses and hurting rural families under this government. And indeed, only yesterday we had yet another example of this, because as fuel prices surge, Labour MPs voted yesterday to make the fuel in our cars even more expensive than it already is. On this side of the House, we know that rural families depend on their cars to live. This is why we are asking this government, why is this Labour government targeting rural families with ever higher taxes on their cars, their incomes and their businesses, making life harder for us all?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I just point out to the Right Honourable Lady gently that the Prime Minister announced on Monday a £53 million package to help those rural communities who are reliant on heating oil. And on waste crime, I will not take any lectures from the Honourable Lady, who, for the 14 years in government, they had a 2018 review of what to do on waste crime, and they did precisely nothing.
No law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When we came to power, our then DEFRA Secretary committed to protect farmers from being undercut in all new trade deals. I'm pleased to say that we have come good on that commitment. Ahead of the Labour Rural Research Group's push for farming profitability, does the Minister agree to level the playing field in trade deals and reaffirm that commitment to farmers?
Thank you very much. Thank you to my honourable friend. We have promoted and protected farmers in trade deal, unlike the previous government who sold them down the river on the US and Australian trade deals.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Harrow, we've suffered 2 industrial-type dumping facilities on land that is earmarked for much-needed housing development. It's cost thousands of pounds to clear up. The council has issued more than 1,000 fines for people dumping their rubbish on the streets. I welcome the decision by the Secretary of State to introduce further measures. Will she outline what those measures are and when they'll be introduced so we can end this scourge of fly tipping?
Well, he's absolutely right. And under the previous government, incidents rose by 20% in the last 5 years. We are encouraging councils to seize and crush the vehicles of fly tippers, and we will be consulting on a conditional caution so that people who do fly tip will pick up and pay up.
Paul Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The recent real-life drama, Dirty Business, highlights the scale of issues within the water industry. In my constituency, Yorkshire Water have had serious issues with sewerage outages and poor standards of infrastructure. I welcome the government's water reforms, which will protect customers. However, does the Minister agree with me that we now need to consider public ownership of the water industry in order to resolve the fundamental problems it faces?
I thank him for raising this important issue. Like the viewers of Dirty Business and himself, I share the public's anger about the decades of failure and neglect in our water system, and the documentary was very distressing and upsetting. I've extended an invitation to Heather Preen's mum, Julie, to meet with me, but can I reassure him that as a government we're determined to clean up our rivers, lakes and seas. We've already banned unfair bonuses for water bosses, we're scrapping off and we're ending self-monitoring of water companies.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Caroline fell ill after swimming in the River Thames, needing antibiotic treatment and warned by her doctor never to swim in the river again. Like many others, she's also been enraged by Channel 4's Dirty Business. So will the Secretary of State now step up and not just replace Ofwat, but also improve transparency in monitoring by sewage by volume, not just by time?
I thank the Honourable Lady, and it is incredibly distressing to hear of people falling ill when they're using our bathing waters. That's why one of the reforms we're looking at, which has been led by Chris Whitty, is looking at public health and water to ensure that when we're doing reforms to the water industry, we're bringing back that lens of thinking about this as a public health issue, as well as being an issue regarding pollutions that we see, so we can take action to make sure that we're not continuing to see people falling ill after they're using our beautiful bathing waters.
Thank you very much. 5 people face a vitamin D deficiency with serious health impact, but in South Norfolk we are part of the solution. The John Innes Centre is boosting vitamin D in tomatoes using gene editing technology, and the Quadram Institute is studying the impact. Will the Minister visit my Norwich Research Park to support the changing agritech and supporting people's healthier lives?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're committed to growing agritech and engineering biology sectors, which are key to the industrial strategy. We are allocating £200 million to the Farming Innovation Programme precisely for this purpose, and I look forward to trying to visit my honourable gentleman as soon as I'm out that way.
Good up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was wondering whether the Secretary of State had had a chance to speak to her colleague, the Housing Secretary, about the different pressures that water is having on housing demands in Kent. If she had spoken to Tunbridge and Morling and to South East Water, she would have heard that this planned house building is simply not possible with the water capability available. Has she engaged in any way with her housing colleagues, and does she have an answer for the people in my community?
I thank the Honourable Gentleman for his question, and the short answer is yes. So both the Minister for Housing and I sit on the Water Delivery Task Force, and one of the things the Water Delivery Task Force is looking at is that question of, do we have the amount of water we need in the areas that we need it? So we've done some heat mapping to look at areas of stress. It's why we're committed to building 9 new reservoirs, which were obviously non-built over the last 30 years. And we also sit together on the Oxfam group as well, so looking at areas where there's acute stress to make sure that we have the water security we need for this country to deliver for growth, to support our environment and to build the homes that we need.
Mr. Speaker, there are widespread concerns that we are way off target for national biodiversity targets. So does the Minister agree that we now need no further backward steps on environmental protection and must set clear red lines for nature?
I agree that the environmental improvement plan we inherited was not fit for purpose, but we are going to oversee the largest investment in nature ever. We've banned bee-killing pesticides, licensed the first wild beaver release in England for 400 years, and announced the first new national forest for 30 years.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Red diesel prices have shot up by 60%. A third of the world's fertiliser goes through the Strait of Hormuz, and energy prices, as we all know, are skyrocketing, all of which is creating challenges for farmers and ultimately for the price that we will all pay for food in the shops. What is the Minister doing to work across department to reduce pressure on farmers and reassure them that this government for once understands the challenges they face and their importance for UK food security?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're well aware that the events in the Middle East are putting pressure on input prices. She mentioned red diesel and fertiliser for the farming sector. I've talked to the CEO of the Competition and Markets Authority. We're taking a very close look at what's happening to see that there's no market abuse, and we've got very close eyes on how this situation develops. My right honourable friend, the Chancellor, has already announced extra support for fuel oil in rural communities, and we are keeping a watching brief in this very important.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents across Bexley and Crayford continue to raise their concerns about last year's price increase from Thames Water. While I appreciate the need to put right the failings of the past, will the Minister give assurances that Thames Water are being held to account and provide information to customers about how infrastructure will be improved locally?
I thank my honourable friend, and I share his anger about the poor service that many people are seeing from Thames Water. I can absolutely assure him they are being held to account, which is why there was a record £122 million fine issued by Ofwat only a few months ago.
Stephen Barclay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After a serious pollution incident, the Environment Agency produced what is referred to as a HELP report that is shared with her officials. And so she will have been notified of a Category 1, the most serious pollution incident that occurred in September 2024 at Stanground near Whittlesea in my constituency. Yet no prosecution has been made. Can the Secretary of State explain why?
I thank the right honourable gentleman for his question, and I'm happy to look into that and get back to him in writing.
Douglas McAllister.
The organisation Suffers Against Sewage have just published their investigation into illegal dry spills by water companies across 2025. Over 204,000 hours of illegal sewage spills last year, and the situation in Scotland is no better, with Scottish Water having very little accountability, with just 30% of overflows currently monitored and 70% unreported. So will this government take tougher action to ensure water companies are held properly to account?
I thank my honourable friend for his question, and we absolutely are in England holding those companies to account by banning bonuses, abolishing Ofwat, introducing over 10,000 inspections for water companies. Sadly, our power does not extend to that of Scotland, and I can only hope that the SNP continue to follow our lead.
Chris Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Fishing and Coastal Growth Fund saw an utterly meagre £28 million devolved to Scotland whilst 304 million to England, despite Scotland representing 60% of fishing capacity in the UK. So despite unable to understand basic arithmetic, is the Minister considering mitigations to ensure that Scotland's fishing industry and coastal communities can thrive?
The Scottish Government had the largest real terms increase in its funding in the Comprehensive Spending Review since devolution. And if they wish to support their thriving Scottish fishing industry more, they have every right to do so.
That completes question. Point of order, Victoria.
Extremely grateful. Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State announced yet another supposedly significant policy this week, the Land Use Framework, outside Parliament, and has not offered an oral statement so that ministers may be scrutinised. This is the 5th time she has done this. The other 4 occasions were the Baroness Batter's review, the animal welfare strategy, the family farm tax fiasco, and the SFI scheme, which we've heard has attracted many questions today because colleagues need to know more details for their constituents. What can be done, Mr. Speaker, to encourage the Secretary of State to make a proper announcement in this House so that members of Parliament can...
You put the point on. Well, I've got the Secretary of State. I'll ask Jewish to respond. Secretary of State.
Happy to respond. We issued a written ministerial statement yesterday. I have done oral statements on big issues like the Water White Paper. I note that when my predecessor did an oral statement on water in September, she didn't care to attend.
What I would say is, and I'll just put it for the benefit of the House, a WMS was out there. What I would say is, priorities always should be given to this House, and I say that to the government, and I'm sure it will be noted. We have far too many that are made outside, but there was a WMS on this occasion. Yeah. I will leave it at that because I've got other things to get through. Please let front bench change over. We now come to oral questions. The Solicitor General, Sarah Coombs.
One, please, Mr. Speaker.
Solicitor General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I'd like to pay tribute to Nick Epgrave for his dedication, professionalism and tenacity during his tenure as Director of the Serious Fraud Office. Over the past 5 years, the SFO has secured more than £500 million through deferred prosecution agreements, sentencing outcomes and proceeds of crime orders, including recently securing guilty pleas from 3 former directors who defrauded over 3,000 UK investors in a £70 million green investment fraud.
Sarah Coombs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Scams are devastating for the victims of my constituency, but serious fraud is insidious and is undermining the UK economy. Given the Serious Fraud Office recently found that just 10% of fraud referrals are coming from whistleblowers, what more is the government doing to empower whistleblowers to come forward and protect them when they do? I thank my honourable friend for that question, and I recognise the vital role that whistleblowers play in uncovering serious economic crime and the need to ensure they are properly protected and supported when they come forward. Through the recently launched UK anti-corruption strategy, the government has committed to exploring opportunities to reform the UK whistleblowing framework, including through potential financial incentives. I will continue to work across government to see how we can drive this forward.
Swain.
Sir.
Solicitor.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 2, 8, 9 and 10 together. The government's reforms will focus on delivering faster and fairer justice for victims. This includes removing the presumption of parental involvement to prioritise what is in the best interests of children after tireless campaigning from Claire Throssell, whose 2 sons, Jack and Paul, were killed by their father after their separation. Reforms also include strengthening the use of special measures and preventing the misuse of evidence to unfairly undermine victims in court.
Sir Desmond Swain.
On the 3rd of February, the Lord Chancellor undertook to model his proposals for jury trials and to publish the results. Has the modelling been done, and when will the results be published?
The reforms that the honourable gentleman refers to come after Sir Brian Leveson set out a report with 135 recommendations, making clear that investment alone in the justice system wouldn't solve the backlog left by the previous Conservative government, and that reform is also needed. Estimates show that it will reduce cases by 20%, although given the modelling from Canada, it's likely that those are Conservative estimates.
Dr Neil Shasrihurst.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The contentious element of this bill relates to the proposed changes to jury trial. It's united the legal profession, it's united these benches, and it's united a significant number of government MPs as well. To avoid the embarrassment for government MPs coming out and defending this policy only to face a U-turn, can the Solicitor General give a categorical assurance to her own side that there will be no U-turn or watering down of this folly of a policy?
I'm sure the honourable gentleman listened to what the Deputy Prime Minister had to say at Justice questions 2 days ago. The reality is that the last Conservative government left the justice system on its knees, a backlog of 80,000 cases, which without both investment and reform will simply go up. That is why we are funding unlimited sitting days, increasing spending on criminal defence lawyers and investing in the crumbling courts, which the last government left behind. But Sir Brian was clear that investment alone would not tackle the backlog sufficiently, and that's why radical reform is also needed.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Notwithstanding what the Honourable Lady has just said, she must recognise that there is growing resentment and lack of confidence from not just the wider general public, but from within the legal profession. How does she expect to maintain confidence in the judicial process against such widespread opposition?
Well, let me just say something about confidence and the confidence of victims who are waiting 3 years in some cases for their rape case to get to court because of the backlogs that we inherited from the last Conservative government. That's not confidence in the justice system. That's why these reforms are necessary. We're clearing up the mess that the previous government left us.
Sir Edward Lee.
Further to that answer that the Honourable Lady has just given, it's obviously outrageous that rape victims have to wait 3 years. We all accept that, and we've had moving testimony on that. The problem is the Institute of Government has found that abolishing jury trials may actually only get these rape trials on a week earlier. So can I ask this direct question to her? In the Labour manifesto, it promised specialist rape courts. Why doesn't the Minister now take action, set up specialist rape courts, pay lawyers properly to undertake the work, and deal with this backlog now?
Well, the honourable gentleman will be aware that listing is a matter for the judiciary, but one proposal being brought forward is a national listing framework to make sure that cases are listed as soon as possible. But we are committed to supporting victims of rape and serious sexual violence. That's why we launched our landmark strategy in December to halve violence against women and girls in a decade. It's why we are investing over £500 million in victim support services, including victims of rape and serious sexual violence.
Andy Slaughter, Chair of the Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. At her annual press conference this week, the Lady Chief Justice, Baroness Carr, said, I have grave security concerns if there are going to be judge-alone trials. Does the Solicitor General share those concerns, and what is the government doing about it?
My honourable friend, as always, makes an extremely important point. I would be happy to discuss both the Lady Chief Justice comments, with whom I meet with regularly, with colleagues in the Ministry of Justice to get answers to those important issues.
Lindsay Fox.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Our plan for court reform implements time savings across the system, not just in the courtroom, but with a number of other aspects of the justice system that contribute to delays with the administration of jury trials, from the summoning of jurors, the compiling of jury bundles, juror expenses and behind-the-scenes preparation. Does the Solicitor General agree with me that these crucial changes will address the bigger picture of delays across the system and allow the Crown Prosecution Service to focus on delivering swift justice for victims?
My honourable friend is completely right and, of course, has considerable experience as a previous Crown prosecutor, and she will know that is why we are investing £2.78 billion in the coming year. That includes over £280 million for vital repairs, digital upgrades and unlimiting sitting days in the Crown Court. Record funding for our courts. It's only the combination of reform, investment and modernisation that will ultimately deliver faster and fairer justice.
Caroline Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It should be a fundamental right to be safe at home, and the Courts and Tribunal Bill delivers that for children in this country by removing the presumption of parental contact. Will the Solicitor General join me in paying tribute to the tireless campaigning of Claire Throssell, who has fought every day in Jack and Paul's memory to put children's safety in law so no one else will have to suffer as they did?
My honourable friend makes an incredibly important point, and I'm sure the whole House will want to pay tribute to Claire Throssell for her tireless campaigning and to the memory of her two children, Jack and Paul. Every child deserves to be safe and every family deserves a justice system they can trust. We need to make sure that what happened to Claire and her children never happens again. That's why this government is introducing this measure to repeal the presumption of parental involvement. Courts will no longer start from an assumption that parental involvement is always in a child's best interest and instead adopt an open-minded inquiry into what's in a child's best interests. This government is putting children's welfare and safety first.
Lord Peter Prinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the government's reform to the criminal justice system. But I'd like to ask what measures will be taken to increase cultural, class and age group diversity in magistrate recruitment so as to increase confidence in our reforms.
My honourable friend, as always, makes an incredibly important point. I understand that measures are being taken to recruit more magistrates from more diverse backgrounds. Magistrates are the cornerstone of local justice, and it is right that they represent the communities in which they are taking decisions.
Shadow Solicitor General Helen Grant.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. The Courts Minister at second reading told this House that politics is about choices. So let us be clear about the choices that this government have made. They chose to bring forward a bill with no consultation, no manifesto mandate, no green paper, no white paper, and no robust modelling. They chose to go further than Sir Brian Leveson had recommended. They chose to remove the right to trial by jury for offences carrying up to 3 years in prison. Sentences that will cost defendants their jobs, their homes and their families. And they chose to do all this, Mr. Speaker, in 5 days of committee scrutiny. So what does the Minister think about the choices that her government has made? And what will she tell the victims of miscarriages of justice and the thousands of legal professionals who are in opposition?
Well, first of all, can I pay tribute to the Honourable Lady's tireless campaigning on behalf of her constituents Paula and Tony Hudgell. I'm pleased that the government has now announced a child cruelty register. In relation to the points that she makes, Sir Brian Leveson, incredibly well regarded and experienced lawyer, took months on his 2 reports, which sets out a huge number of recommendations. The Honourable Lady talks about choices. Well, we inherited a court system on its knees, with rape victims waiting 3 years and more in some cases for their cases to get to court. It was a dereliction of the previous government not to tackle this court backlog. We are getting on with the job. That's the choice that this government has made.
Ellen Grant.
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady in what she said about the case of Hudgel and the child cruelty register. It has been an amazing campaign led by Paula Hudgel and her little boy, and I'm pleased that we were able to get cross-party support to change the law and hopefully look after children and save lives. But it's unfortunate that she just will not answer the very straightforward questions that I'm asking. Jo Hamilton, OBE, was a victim of the Post Office Horizon scandal, and she made it very clear that under government proposals that none of the wrongly convicted 900 sub-postmasters would have had the right to a jury trial. And just this weekend, Mr. Speaker, there was a further revelation, this time involving the Prime Minister. In a report, he had previously concluded that scrapping jury trials led to unreliable convictions in Northern Ireland in the 1990s. So can the Minister please explain how removing this vital safeguard makes the justice system more fair and not less?
Well, the Honourable Lady will be well aware that we are not removing jury trials. Jury trials will remain a cornerstone of this justice system. The reality is that the vast majority of cases that are heard in this country are not heard by a jury. 90% of cases are not heard by a jury. So it's wrong to say that we are getting rid of jury trials. There will be some cases that are currently triable either way, where sentences are expected to be 3 years or less, that will be heard by a judge. Judges act without fear or favour. They swear a judicial oath, but jury trials will still continue in this country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 3.
Solicitor General.
The law officer's power to refer unduly lenient sentences to the Court of Appeal is a powerful way to ensure justice is achieved in some of the most serious crimes. It gives a voice to victims, their families and the public in the sentencing of cases. Since my appointment as Solicitor General in September last year, I've received requests to review the sentences imposed on 815 offenders. And in the last 6 months, 30 offenders have had their sentences increased under the scheme.
Red Beavers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am grateful for the Solicitor General's meeting with me on Monday about the failures of the unduly lenient sentencing scheme. It is not enough to simply ensure families are informed of their rights. They should have longer than the current 28 days to use those rights. For families who have been put through the traumatic trials, it is just not long enough. Could the Solicitor General update the House on what plans she has to ensure families of victims have every chance to see justice done?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for attending the unduly lenient sentence scheme victims roundtable on Monday evening. I know what a strong advocate she is for her constituent Katie Brett, whose sister Sasha was brutally murdered. Victims and families should always be informed about the scheme, but I know it doesn't always happen, and how grief is compounded if an application is then rejected out of time. That's not good enough, and it's why I'm working with the Ministry of Justice to find solutions.
Robbie Moore.
Can I thank the Solicitor General for our meeting in January to discuss improving the ULS scheme? As I've said before, it cannot be right that grieving families have just 28 days to appeal their sentences of their abusers, whereas the abusers themselves can extend the deadline. There are common sense approaches that we can make right now, including extending the 28-day deadline, creating the statutory duty for victims and expanding its scope. These are backed by the Victims Commissioner. So does the Minister agree?
Thank the honourable gentleman for that question and welcome the opportunity to meet with him recently to discuss these issues in more detail. Can I take this opportunity, Mr Speaker, to pay tribute to Tracy Hanson, who's been a tireless campaigner for victims of serious crime, and particularly in relation to unduly lenient sentences following the tragic loss of her son, Josh. Organisations like the Josh Hanson Trust do vital work in this area. As I said in answer to the previous question, I am working with Ministry of Justice colleagues to see if we can find solutions to some of the issues that have been raised today.
Sir Russell.
Question number 4, please, Mr Speaker.
Solicitor General.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Today I can announce an additional £5 million of funding for the CPS to be invested for victims of domestic abuse. In 3 pilot areas, victims will be offered meetings with prosecutors ahead of Crown Court trials, ensuring their voices are heard and better supporting them to remain engaged in the criminal justice process. This offer is already available to victims of rape and serious sexual assault across the country. I know from speaking with prosecutors and victims the difference these meetings can make, and I'm pleased to see it expanded to victims of domestic abuse.
Sir Russell.
Thank you, Solicitor General, and I very much welcome that news. The prosecution rates for cases involving violence against women and girls are shamefully low. I strongly welcome the government's ambition to tackle violence against women and girls, including our manifesto commitments to fast-track rape cases and introduce specialist courts. Will the Minister agree to meet with me to discuss the government's specific progress on these promises?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and I know that she is a strong advocate for tackling violence against women and girls. And I'm proud of our cross-government strategy that we set out in December to do just that. I'll be more than happy to meet with my honourable friend to discuss these issues in more detail.
Robin Swan.
Much, Mr Speaker. The Solicitor General will know that in Northern Ireland since 2020, 29 women have been murdered and we've seen a significant increase in femicide. So can I ask the Solicitor General to give an assurance that she will continue to engage with the Northern Ireland Attorney General and Justice Minister to ensure that the rate of prosecutions is also increased in Northern Ireland?
I thank the honourable gentleman for raising that important point, and I am happy to engage further on those really important matters.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Ben Maguire.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And could I just ask the Solicitor General, first of all, to please follow up on her kind offer to chase the Justice Minister responsible for legal aid to meet with me about support for domestic abuse victims. The 2024 Domestic Abuse Joint Justice Plan aims to improve early coordination between police and the CPS. I'm aware a review was conducted as part of the plan, highlighting concerns around the quality and timeliness of police referrals and CPS decision-making. However, Mr Speaker, based on recent cases I've heard from my North Cornwall constituents and from other members in this place, I'm rather concerned that the plan's focus on high-risk victims does not ensure accurate identification of who is genuinely at high risk. Professionals could misinterpret or overlook risk factors, meaning some of these high-risk cases may be wrongly assessed and underestimated in severity. So does the Solicitor General agree that while the plan improved investigations and prosecutions, a needs-based approach is absolutely essential, especially to show victims that coming forward is worthwhile and that the justice system won't fail them?
I thank my honourable the honourable gentleman for that question, and I know that he's a strong champion on these issues. He talked about timeliness. The Domestic Abuse Charging Authority pilot, which I visited recently in Wales, is showing huge improvements of getting domestic abuse cases to court, which in turn helps with victim attrition. Just in relation to his points about Cornwall, I'm pleased to inform him that from July 2024 to March 26, the CPS charged over 2,800 offenders of domestic abuse and over 2,300 were convicted. That includes over 900 convictions in Devon and Cornwall. I will continue to work with the CPS to ensure that we are prosecuting VOG offenders, including in his constituency, and I'll be very happy to take the point away about chasing up the meeting with the Justice Minister.
That completes Solicitor General questions. Let the front bench change over. To leaders' questions, Chair Leader of the House, Jesse Norman.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. Will the Leader of the House give us the forthcoming business?
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The business for the week commencing 23rd of March will include Monday the 23rd of March, consideration of Lord's amendments to the Tobacco and Vapes Bill, followed by consideration of Lord's amendments to the National Insurance Contributions Employer Pensions Contributions Bill. Tuesday the 24th of March, Opposition Day, on a debate on a motion in the name of the official opposition, subject to be announced. Wednesday the 25th of March, consideration of Lord's amendments to the Victims and Courts Bill. Thursday the 26th of March, debate on a motion on transport accessibility for disabled people, followed by a general debate on support for Gurkha veterans. The subject for these debates were determined by the Backbench Business Committee. The House of Commons will then rise for the Easter recess at the conclusion of business on Thursday the 26th of March and return on Monday the 13th of April.
Jesse Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me begin, if I may, by paying tribute to President Zelensky. Thanks to you, Mr. Speaker, he gave an extraordinary speech here this week, a speech like Auden's Shield of Achilles, a speech of poetry and hope, but also of steel. He showed that Ukraine, far from being bowed by Russia, is now sharing its expertise in counter-drone defence with nations across the Gulf and elsewhere. I also give thanks for the swift action the government has taken so far to support households, including many in Herefordshire, now facing sharp and unexpected increases in the cost of heating oil. Mr. Speaker, as Herefordshire goes, so goes the UK. The events in the Middle East have exposed a hard truth. This country is dangerously exposed on energy, and the government's policies are compounding that vulnerability. Around a fifth of the world's oil and gas, LNG, passes through the Straits of Hormuz. When that is threatened, prices spike. And when prices spike, everything else is hit: heating, electricity, industry, jobs. Every industrialised economy relies on secure and affordable energy, yet we import in this country around 60% of the gas we use, and we pay far more than our competitor nations and around 3 times US prices for it. So when shocks come, the benefits of higher gas prices go to other countries, but our citizens bear the higher costs and added insecurity. That structural vulnerability has built up over decades under governments of all the major parties. But this government is negligently or deliberately making it much worse. They've blocked new North Sea licenses and sent a clear signal that domestic oil and gas production is to be run down regardless of demand. The consequences of these decisions are already visible. The CF fertilisers plant near Chester has closed thanks to high energy costs, so this country now imports ammonia instead. The Grangemouth refinery is ceasing its refining operations and becoming an import terminal. In Aberdeen, Scunthorpe, Teesside, investment is falling and companies are failing. Thousands of jobs have been lost and tens of thousands more put at risk. Little wonder a host of businesses And unions, including Unite and the GMB, even Renewables UK, have expressed their concern. These are not isolated events, Mr. Speaker. They are the predictable effects of policy decisions taken by ministers without any serious consideration of the economic and strategic consequences in the current context. The Energy Secretary often says the problem is global gas prices and that increasing domestic production makes no difference. Of course, that is nonsense, because domestic production actually boosts jobs, public revenues and national resilience while lowering emissions. But that line is also dangerously misleading. Gas prices are regional, not global, because gas, unlike oil, is relatively expensive to ship and store. The Energy Secretary is confusing a global market with global pricing. It is a basic error. Alas, the Chancellor is no less confused. On Tuesday, she said, and I quote, "You see countries like Canada and Norway increasing their production, and every country has to play their part." But of course, in her view, that does not include the UK. Her policy is precisely the opposite, not to increase, but to reduce oil and gas production. You could not make it up. Shortly, we will hear the Business Secretary make a statement on how the government wants to increase domestic steel production, even while it is stopping the domestic oil and gas on which that steel production relies. It's an absolute nonsense. Mr. Speaker, cut domestic production in the face of steady demand and imports will fill the gap. But an increasingly import-dependent system is forced to rely ever more on pipelines, LNG cargoes and interconnectors. These are vulnerable, fixed assets open to damage and disruption from abroad. And there is a further consequence. Modern conflict is determined by industrial capacity, steel, chemicals, fuels, supply chains. Yet the government is allowing these national sovereign capabilities to erode. So, this is a policy that increases carbon emissions, deprives Britain of tax revenues, worsens the balance of payments, hurts consumers and businesses, and weakens both our energy resources and our national security. That is quite an achievement. Mr. Speaker, it is hard to imagine a more confused or dangerous approach. I don't want to debate on this topic. We can all see what's happening. At some point, there must be a U-turn because Iran is making a fool of the Energy Secretary. No, I desperately want the Leader of the House to get the Prime Minister to see the madness of this approach and get the policy changed as soon as he possibly can.
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, Mr. Speaker, can I say that my thoughts are with the friends and family of the young people who have died and others who are currently unwell as a result of the meningitis outbreak in Kent. I also, Mr. Speaker, want to place on record our tribute to Phil Willis, who was a greatly respected and admired colleague and played a considerable role in modernising the Labour Party. And I'm sure the whole House will join me in sending our condolences to his friends and family. Let me join with the Shadow Leader in praise of President Zelensky and what he said earlier this week. This week, Mr. Speaker, a new defence pact has been agreed between the UK and Ukraine, and by deepening our defence partnerships, we're strengthening Ukraine's ability to defend itself from Putin's ongoing attacks, while ensuring the UK and our allies are better prepared to meet the threats of the future. We were, as the honourable gentleman said, honoured, Mr. Speaker, to listen to President Zelensky on Tuesday, and I must thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the role that you played in organising the event, but also in making clear this House's unwavering support for the Ukrainian people. I just want to mention another couple of things, Mr. Speaker, if I may, before we get to the comments of the honourable gentleman. On Monday, the Modernisation Committee launched an inquiry into backbench business and petitions debates as part of an ongoing inquiry on how time is used in this place. Both the Backbench Business and Petitions Committees play a vital role in bringing key issues of local, national and international importance to this House. Members will have received an online form seeking their views, and I would encourage all members to engage in this inquiry. In addition, this morning, the response from the House Administration to the Modernisation Committee's report on accessibility in the House of Commons was published, and I'd like to thank all of those who contributed to the inquiry and the House authorities for the progress they are making in addressing the important matters raised in the report. And as I committed, Mr. Speaker, the House will have the opportunity to consider this report in due course. Let me turn to the comments by the Shadow Leader of the House, and first of all thank him for the support which he has given for what we have already done on the price of fuel oil. And let me reassure his Herefordshire constituents and indeed the House that the government keeps these matters in the forefront of our minds and under close scrutiny, and if necessary we will take further action. I agree with him on one point from the rest of what he said, which is that we should be concerned about potential spikes in fuel prices during crises. But I have to say he made an admirable case for energy independence and the policy of this government. He also talked about the North Sea as a matter of concern, and it is a matter of concern, not just for the whole country, but particularly for constituencies in the region that I represent. But I have to point out, Mr. Speaker, that the North Sea is a mature oil and gas area, and therefore it isn't surprising when he quotes some of the things that have happened in that area, because it is mature and in that sense declining. But gas and energy from the North Sea will be part of the energy transition in the UK for some decades to come. And the big lesson that we learned from this particular crisis is that we have to get off the roller coaster of oil and gas. And that means getting off fossil fuels and onto homegrown clean power, which is why he talks about the inaction of the government. It's why we're bringing forward the next auction for renewables, extending solar and accelerating the Warm Homes Plan rollout. But he talks about the loss of jobs in the area. I have to point out that 70% fall in jobs in the North Sea came from during the time of the government of which he was a supporter. And in terms of turning this round, it would take a decade, Mr. Speaker, between starting to explore and to extract oil. Not a single barrel of extra oil extracted from the North Sea today would reduce prices for consumers. And if he doesn't take my word for it, Mr. Speaker, let him take the words of his Conservative Energy Minister in 2022, who said, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, "More UK production wouldn't reduce the global price of gas." So as the Shadow Leader said, you couldn't make it up. And on the question of steel, Mr. Speaker, there will be a statement later today about our steel strategy going forward. So the idea that we don't value these national assets, I'm afraid, is simply untrue. We have acted already with regard to Scunthorpe, and we will be acting not just on steel, but other matters of national importance, because they're in our national interest.
Christine Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Saturday, Nicola's Women's Support Group celebrated its first anniversary, marking a year of welcoming women in West Lothian to connect, share experiences and offer a listening ear. Nicola's was founded in memory of a beautiful young woman, Nicola, who took her own life after repeated delays to desperately needed surgery for endometriosis. Will the Leader of the House join me in thanking Nicola's team, including her family and all the volunteers, for the invaluable work they do to support local women?
I will do, Mr. Speaker. It is unacceptable that Nicola had to wait so long for the surgery that she needed, and I'm sorry to hear of her family and friends' tragic loss. We have committed, Mr. Speaker, to renewing the women's health strategy to tackle inequalities and improve access to healthcare for women across England, and supporting groups like Nicola's provide an essential lifeline for women living with health issues. And I would encourage my honourable friend and indeed other honourable members to attend next week's Westminster Hall debate on access to endometriosis services.
Bobby Dean, Liberal Democrat spokesman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure you'll be as concerned as I am about the recent outbreak of meningitis in Kent, and I'm sure the thoughts of the whole House are with the families of those who have lost loved ones already. The UK Health and Security Agency now has a huge job in its hands to get good public health information out there and to work with the NHS on a targeted vaccination programme. And I think it's a reminder of how much faith and trust we put into health professionals in these moments of crisis, who are all dedicated to keeping us safe. It is also a reminder, though, of the dangers of bad information. And it's a sad truth that in this country, the take-up rates of child vaccination has been declining over the course of the last decade. Some of this has been attributed to misinformation that's allowed to spread freely online, but there are also well-organised and well-funded anti-vaccination groups now that I'm sure we've all come across in time. And unfortunately, it's also been egged on at times by populist politicians. President Trump in America has appointed a vaccine sceptic into a senior role in the White House, and of course the Reform Party platformed an anti-vax spokesperson at their own conference recently. And we will all have got stick online if we dare to confront this subject, and I even have protesters in my high street who have stopped me whilst walking my dog to give me stick about the subject. And I think that's made us as a political class a little bit scared to take this subject on. And I think it's about time that we use moments like this to take on those conspiracy theorists. So I wonder if the Leader of the House could organise for a statement to be made about how we're going to tackle this rise in misinformation, this rise in conspiracy theories, and ultimately get that childhood rate of vaccination up again.
Mr. Speaker, firstly, Mr. Speaker, as I said in my earlier remarks, our thoughts are with the friends and family of the young people who have tragically died, but also others who are currently unwell. The Honourable Gentleman is absolutely right about the importance of the UK HSA. It is monitoring the situation and has launched a targeted vaccination programme, starting with students that are most at risk, and they'll be contacted directly. And I would encourage everyone affected to take preventative antibiotics or the vaccine if they are offered. And the Health Secretary is considering what steps can be taken to improve as wider vaccination uptake, not just in this matter but across the population. Because the Honourable Gentleman is absolutely right in his comments about misinformation or disinformation. And I would urge everyone to share the public health information that is disseminating online so that we can spread facts, Mr. Speaker, rather than misinformation. It really is an important matter, and I will draw his comments to the attention of the Health Secretary.
Lindsay Pott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Denby Pottery has been the heart of Amber Valley since 1809. It provides over 500 jobs and brings in 250,000 visitors a year. But they've sadly had to apply for administration support. While the Prime Minister has already committed to a review of the supercharger scheme, which helps with energy costs, I hope this will be sped up in light of the current situation and include the ceramics industry in it. Today, #SaveDenby has launched a campaign asking people to buy Denby, visit the brilliant pottery village in Derbyshire, or just simply share the campaign far and wide. So, with Easter around the corner, might I invite the Leader of the House to consider picking up some Denby pottery, and will he join me in encouraging other members to do the same and help me save Denby pottery?
Mr. Speaker, I say to my honourable friend that I will certainly give that consideration, and I not only thank her for her question, but certainly join her in encouraging members to pick up some Denby pottery, because this is a crisis situation for the company, and I know it's a difficult period ahead, and anything that we can do to help we should consider doing. On the matter of energy prices, the government recognises how energy prices as a significant pressure on UK industry, including ceramics. That's why, as she mentions, we're increasing the discount on energy costs through the British Industry Supercharger. But I do know that this will be a worrying time for the employees at Denby Pottery, and I'll make sure that ministers are aware of her concerns as a matter of urgency.
Bob Blackman, Chair of the Backbench Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the Leader for announcing the business for the Chamber for next week. Could he give us early notice of whether we're going to get time after Easter so the committee can allocate time accordingly? In addition, next Thursday, there'll be a statement from the EFRA Select Committee on their report on coastal erosion. In Westminster Hall next Tuesday, there'll be a debate on sudden unexplained death in childhood. On Thursday, the 26th, there'll be a debate on outcome for patients with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and craniocervical instability, followed by a debate on potential merits of mandatory body armour for prison officers. On Tuesday, the 14th, when we come back, there'll be a debate on hidden credit liabilities and the role of the FCA. And on Thursday, the 16th, debates on housing needs of young people, followed by a debate on NHS Federated Data Platform. And I hope that the leader will bring forward the necessary changes to standing orders that he promised before we go prorogue for the state opening of Parliament. Now, Mr Speaker, in my position as chairman of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for British Hindus, I have been in contact with Peterborough Council about the plight of the Bharat Hindu Samaj Temple. This is the only Hindu temple in Peterborough. There are 11 mosques in the area, and I wish them Eid Mubarak as we approach the end of Ramadan. But the council have decided to sell the temple after the trustees of the temple agreed to match any other bid that came forward. They eventually offered £1.4 million. The councillors, however, chose to have another bid of £1.2 million. This was kept in secret. Now the trustees have taken the case to court and indeed have got to a position whereby the judge has stayed the sale of the site. Could we have a statement from the Secretary of State next week on what action he's going to take to make sure we preserve the opportunity for Hindus in Peterborough and across the country to celebrate their religion in proper fashion, in peace and harmony?
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. On the matter of the early notice of time, I'll certainly bear in mind what the honourable gentleman says in thanking him for the work that his committee do. He will appreciate, however, that as we, and it's no secret, approach the end of this particular session over the next few weeks, things like Lord's amendments that tend to dominate these matters, it's quite tricky in order to take out all uncertainty. But I will do everything that I can in order to do that. In terms of the change to standing orders, I will certainly look at what he requests and see if we can do that. With regard to the concerns that he raises about the Hindu community in Peterborough, we understand the concerns, not least because of the excellent work that my honourable friend, the member for Peterborough, does on these matters. And for whom members of his community, the temple has been a primary place of worship for many years. This is ultimately a matter for the local authority, but we hope that the local authority will engage productively with the community on these matters. And on the wider matters of temples and places of worship, I'll raise his concerns with the relevant Secretary of State.
I will now bring in the Member of Parliament for Peterborough, Andrew Page.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Am I okay to ask my question I was going to ask as well? Can I just put on record I'm deeply disappointed as the Member of Parliament representing this constituency where the temple is based that I've not had a conversation with the honourable member and he's used parliamentary privilege to state some untruths, something which is subject to legal action.
We can't use the word untruths. There may have been a misunderstanding, but we certainly don't have untruths. I
apologise to the House for that. He's stated things which are not factual in relation to this. But, Mr Speaker, what I wanted to say is that one of the great blessings I actually have as a Member of Parliament is joining with communities to celebrate things like Diwali, Hanukkah, Vaisakhi, and in the coming hours I'll be joining many members of my community to celebrate Eid, which is coming up. I'd like to ask the Leader of the House, does he recognise the divisive, exclusionary, hateful language that some people have been using to describe a community iftar in recent days, which shows that it isn't about British values, it's the antithesis of British values to seek to divide and drive hatred? And will he join me in wishing well all of those who will be taking part in Eid in the Park in Peterborough in the coming hours as showing off the best of my city? And will he make time in parliamentary hours to ensure we can have a debate about the language we use when we talk about social cohesion and bringing our faiths together rather than dividing them?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I'm grateful to my honourable friend for his clarification on these matters, and I'm more than happy to speak to him afterwards about that. With regard to the statements which he condemns, the Prime Minister was absolutely clear yesterday that the statements which he refers to by the spokesperson for the opposition were utterly appalling and only spread poison and division. Freedom of religion and the right of peaceful expression are fundamental British values, not the opposite. These rights should be respected for everyone, and it applies equally to peaceful prayer, protesting or assembly or wherever it happens to be. So I do join with him in wishing everyone celebrating Eid, wherever they are celebrating it. I do wish them well in that, Mr. Speaker, but with the warning to all parties in this place, if you get into the gutter in these matters, the public will not forgive you.
Can I just remind members, if you are going to mention somebody else's constituency, please give them notice. It's courtesy that should happen. Dame Karen Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. One of the great privileges of being a Member of Parliament is being able to raise constituents' concerns directly with ministers. Unfortunately, far too frequently at the moment, the responses that we receive to be sent to our constituents are coming from officials rather than ministers. I'm sure the leader would agree with me that our constituents are entitled to hear from the ministers themselves, and can I ask him to remind his ministerial colleagues of the duty they have to ensure that our constituents hear directly from them and not their officials?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the Right Honourable Lady for raising this question, because members who write to ministers do so with the reasonable expectation that they receive a timely and substantive response from a minister, and that is absolutely right. If the Right Honourable Lady has a specific example which she draws to my attention, I will raise that with the appropriate department, and on the wider issue I will raise it with other departments too.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a profound duty to those who elect us regarding the scrutiny of legislation. The other place has been debating the crime and policing bill this week, which is wide in scope and raises several concerns of utmost importance to our constituents. Could the Leader of the House provide clarity on the length of time that will be provided to members of this House to properly debate and vote on amendments, including Lord's amendments on a new category of extreme criminal protest groups, as well as new and existing government clauses on so-called cumulative disruption and face coverings, which have profound equalities implications? And can he assure us that timetabling pressures before the end of this parliamentary session will not prevent proper scrutiny and consideration of this serious and substantive bill?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for her question today. As she notes, amendments to the Crime and Policing Bill have been considered by the House of Lords, and the Government will consider these as we move forward. I will announce future business in the House in the usual way, Mr. Speaker, but I am absolutely conscious of the importance of providing sufficient time for parliamentary scrutiny wherever it falls in the parliamentary year.
Jamie Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I note what the Leader of the House has said about the forthcoming consultation exercise, and can I urge honourable right honourable members to take part in this exercise? However, Mr. Speaker, what I want to raise today is something that the Shadow Leader of the House touched on, which is the activities in recent months of Russian spy ships and indeed submarines off the coast of my constituency. They're taking a peer at our undersea cables, our connections, and indeed, when you think about the strategic resource of the North Sea, oil, you think also about offshore wind energy. Can I respectfully ask the Leader of the House if you would help facilitate a meeting between myself and perhaps other concerned members and other parties with appropriate ministers to discuss this issue and what our methods and means of defence are?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The North Sea is a critical asset, and this government understands the vital role that it will play in the future. And it is Britain's greatest asset in building our energy future. It gives Scotland and the rest of Britain a chance to lead in offshore wind, carbon capture and storage and hydrogen alongside oil and gas production. It is such an important matter, Mr. Speaker, that I will help to facilitate the meeting that the honourable gentleman asks for.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The events in the Middle East have shown how exposed we remain to polluting and volatile oil and gas markets. Moving on to clean, domestically secure power is obviously the long-term solution, but in the short term, we shouldn't allow gas producers to profiteer while they still far too often set the market price. Analysis by Greenpeace and Stonehaven has suggested we could save millions for households and businesses across the UK by moving gas power stations into the regulated asset base. So could we have a statement from the Energy Secretary about how we can drive through really important market reforms like this to save consumers and businesses right across the UK much-needed money off their energy bills?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Throughout this conflict, Mr. Speaker, our first priority has been to help households with the cost of living, and this underlines our need to focus on clean, homegrown energy. And as the role of gas diminishes, we will continue to explore how market and system arrangements can evolve to minimise its impact on consumer bills, and we will learn the lessons from the current situation that we find ourselves in. I would encourage my honourable friend to raise his specific concerns at Desna's questions next week.
Stephen Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with your forbearance, on Tuesday evening, a car with 5 teenagers left the road near Wisbech in my constituency and entered the river. And tragically, only 3 of the teenagers exited the car. I'm sure the whole House will join me in sending our condolences to the families affected by this tragedy, and also the very distressing recovery that the emergency services are performing. In respect to my question, Mr. Speaker, in the government's Fit for the Future 10-year plan for the NHS, the first of the 3 big shifts it set out is to shift care services from hospital into the community. Yet the exact opposite is happening in Fenland, both at the North Cambridgeshire Hospital site and the Doddington site, where services are being reduced and moved to hospital settings. Could we have a debate on whether this is just the latest U-turn from the government that they've not yet announced, or whether health bosses are free locally simply to ignore the government strategy and do the exact opposite?
Thank you,
Leader.
Mr. Speaker. And first of all, can I join him and the House in sending our deepest condolences to the friends and family of the young people involved. Each and every one of them is a tragedy. On the wider issue about the NHS in his area, there's no question of a U-turn, Mr. Speaker. He knows very well from his former roles in government about the importance of delivering services locally, but having a government setting the strategy and providing the resources. I don't know the detail other than what he has said, and if he wishes to provide me with that, I will certainly raise it with colleagues in the Health Department. But I have to say that there are many on the front line in trusts across the country who are struggling, despite the fact that this government is putting more money into the NHS, who are struggling with the legacy of his government.
Next one.
Mr. Speaker, the government has delivered for mine workers and their families on improving their pension schemes. Members of both the Mine Workers Pension Scheme and the British Coal Staff Superannuation Scheme tell me they are pleased after the release of reserved funds. However, many former miners, now in their 80s and their 90s, could further benefit from future support. So can I ask the Leader of the House if the Minister for Industry can please provide a statement on the next steps for both of those schemes?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for his question. As he rightly draws attention to, the government has delivered justice for members of the former British Coal Pension Scheme, and I want to thank him for the role in which he played in the campaign to persuade the government to do so. He may wish to raise this question, Mr. Speaker, directly with ministers at Desna's questions next week to see what more could be done, or should he seek a statement, a meeting on that with ministers, I'll help him to arrange one.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At a time of heightened global tension, we must be aware of how important it is that we look after our current and ex-service personnel. I've got a constituent who served in the Army and later in the MOD for 50 years. He survived 4-stage cancer, and his illness is now forcing him to retire. Capita, who administers the Civil Servant Pension Scheme, has taken over 2 years to get a statement to him about his pension, ultimately delaying the moment when he can retire. This is just one of 5 different civil service pension cases my office had to deal with in the last 3 months, none of which have received responses from Capita. Can we have a statement from the Minister how we will improve this situation for my constituents and many across the country?
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to hear of the honourable lady's constituents, because we do hold veterans and servicemen and women very high in our thoughts and our regards. The delay that she describes is unacceptable. It's not the service that people deserve. And resolving the matter is of the utmost urgency. There is a recovery plan underway. An interest-free loan is being made available via department to provide immediate financial support, but the Cabinet Office is also using its every opportunity to hold Cabinet to account and ensure that they deliver. So it's about individual cases, and if she wishes to raise that individual case with me, I will see whether we can resolve that. But there is the wider issue about how we can resolve it for everyone, and it's just about every constituency, I would imagine, where there is a case, so that everybody gets the justice that they deserve.
Helen O'Donnell.
Mr. Speaker, the Queensway Gateway roadworks were a shambles from start to finish. Meant to last weeks, they dragged on for almost a year, causing gridlock, and local businesses lost millions. We've just found out that Conservative-run East Sussex County Council overspent by £5 million on these shambolic works. Does the Leader of House agree with me that this is £5 million less now to repair our potholes and repair our roads? And does he agree with me that East Sussex County Council and the contractors involved, like Balfour Beatty, owe it to local taxpayers to explain what the hell went so wrong and how they're going to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend is a doughty campaigner for her constituency, and indeed on this very issue. These roadworks have been very disruptive for her constituents, and there are serious questions, as you said, about how this has been managed by East Sussex County Council. I'll make sure that ministers hear of her concerns. She may wish to raise them directly with ministers of transport questions next week, but just as importantly, by raising them then and indeed here, I hope that her constituents get to hold the council to account.
Rebecca Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if the Leader of the House will join me in congratulating my constituent, John Mildmay White. In fact, his ancestor was a member of this House over 100 years ago. But he recently, as in on Saturday, actually completed a 600-kilometre run from Mothercombe in Devon to Westminster Bridge in aid of Wild About the River. And he's raised at least £25,000 for that cause. So I wonder if he will join with me in congratulating him and all the campaigners that supported him.
Leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I absolutely join the honourable lady in praising Mr. John Mildmay White on his achievement. Is his considerable initiative, and it just goes to show what remarkable people we have in our constituencies.
Belinda Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under the SNP Scottish Government, police numbers in Fife have fallen by an average of 1 a month. Results from a new antisocial behaviour survey show that 4 in 10 residents in Cowdenbeath are afraid to go out after dark, and more than half witness antisocial behaviour every single week. This is unacceptable. Does the Leader of the House agree with me that Cowdenbeath has been badly let down by the SNP and we need change? And will he make time in government time for a debate on antisocial behaviour?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I absolutely do join my honourable friend in her analysis of the situation. The government is committed to making our streets safer by delivering 13,000 more neighbourhood policing roles and introducing new respect orders to deter and drive down antisocial behaviour. But in terms of what happens north of the border, I would remind the House that we have delivered Scotland's largest settlement since devolution. So I hope that the SNP have heard my honourable friend's contribution today and take action. And I would encourage her to apply for a Westminster Hall debate on these matters so that she can set out in even more detail the failure of the SNP government in this regard.
Chris Law.
Mr. Speaker, in January, the UK announced that the Listed Places of Worship grant scheme, which has allowed congregations to reclaim VAT and repairs to listed places of worship, would close at the end of March. Whilst the replacement scheme was announced for England, I understand the Scottish Government were not informed of the advance of this change, leaving both the Scottish Government and places of worship in the lurch following this sudden and unexpected decision. So can I ask, can we have a statement from the UK Government explaining this total disregard and confirm that funding will be made through the Barnett formula for a similar scheme to be now replicated in Scotland?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll certainly, the honourable gentleman may know my appreciation of the importance of places of worship in local communities, wherever they happen to be in our country. I don't know the details of what he's saying, but I'm listening to what my colleagues behind me are saying. And I will look into this after this session, Mr. Speaker. But my understanding is that the SNP government were given the money for this as part of the biggest settlement ever for the SNP government.
Sally James.
Thank you,
Mr Speaker. Capita's handling of the civil service pension scheme has been absolutely abysmal. I've got constituents in the prison service and indeed across the whole civil service who have had their lives devastated because of the financial consequences. So will the Leader of the House escalate this matter to the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, because this now requires a cross-departmental approach to ensure that Capita cannot continue to degrade our public services and the people who work in them?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I certainly will do as my honourable friend asks. The government is taking action on these matters, but escalating it in the way that she suggests is something that I will undertake to do.
John Love.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Tomorrow I will be enjoying Kelso Musical Theatre's performance of Beauty and the Beast at the Tate Hall, and on Saturday I'll be at Lauder's Amateur Dramatic Society performance for their 76th year in the Public Hall. Now, I know from the Leader's marvellous performances here in the House of Commons that he's a great fan of amateur dramatics, but will he join me in wishing the performers well and the production teams?
Leader.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's always good to hear from the Iron Man. On the other side, not least about musical theatre. He is right in that I am a fan of musical theatre, Mr Speaker, so I certainly join the honourable member in wishing all the participants performing in the Kelso Musical Theatre and Lord Amateur Dramatic Society show this weekend the best of luck. As he knows, on a serious point, amateur dramatic groups across the country do play a valuable role in bringing community together and nurturing talent, and we thank each and every one of them.
John Pearce.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This week in Parliament I hosted Mummy Star, which is a charity that supports mums with cancer in and around pregnancy. The charity was set up by my constituent Pete Walworth in honour of his wife Mare, who tragically died just after their son was born. Mummy Star is campaigning for a change in the law that would allow women who are diagnosed with cancer to defer or pause their maternity leave whilst they receive cancer treatment, so that they can spend their maternity leave doing what it should be for, which is to developing the bond with their child. Will the Leader of the House make time, in government time, for a debate on the impact of cancer during pregnancy?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My honourable friend raises a very important topic, and let's put on record our thanks to Pete Walworth, though, of course, we would all prefer not to be in that situation in which he found himself. Everyone should get a personalised needs assessment and personal cancer plan that takes into account their wider need, including the impact of pregnancy, where that is relevant. In addition, parental leave and peer review will explore how the system can better support working families, but I strongly encourage my honourable friend to raise these deeply important matters by applying for Westminster Hall debate on what is a very important issue.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituent, an indomitable lady in her 80s, was seriously assaulted at home last year and her assailant was jailed. He was given a sentence and the court granted an exclusion order covering the whole area around her home where he committed the offence. Over a month ago he was released early, but I understand without a GPS tag, and he's been seen twice within the area from which he's been excluded by court order. The police have no, quote, proof that he's been breached. He's been in breach of his licence conditions, and probation says it has no grounds to recall the offender. Services are asking my constituent, who is unusually terrified, to gather and provide the evidence that he was in breach so they can investigate properly. And I was going to ask, please, if we can have some sort of statement from the Justice Ministry to make sure that we get this tagging contract sorted out once and for all, and that we stop phrases like the services saying that they're sorry for the disappointment about the scenario, which means absolutely nothing to my constituent. She's more than sorry.
Leader. Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm sure she's more than sorry, because this appears to be an unacceptable case, which, if the Honourable Lady gives me the details, I will raise with the Justice Secretary, and then we'll see going forward about the need for a statement on tagging and the wider issues.
Jim McMahon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This week, another life was taken as a result of a road traffic collision in Royton. Another family left devastated. Our borough saw 8 people killed in 2024. That's the highest number in a decade, and of those, 6 were pedestrians. There were more pedestrians killed in a single year than the previous 3 years combined, including children simply walking on the pavement. For our town, this is a public health emergency, and though I welcome hotspot policing operations, the truth is we need more patrols on the streets every day. So can we have a debate in government time on traffic policing and reducing road deaths by dangerous driving?
Mr. Speaker, as my honourable friend knows, that we have announced the first road safety strategy in over a decade, with a plan to reduce deaths and serious injuries on Britain's roads by about 2/3 by 2035. We've launched consultations on measures tackling causes of road collision. On the specific matter of road traffic policing, I would encourage my honourable friend to look towards a Westminster Hall debate where he can not just talk about safety on the roads, but the particular point about police presence.
Where are we up to now? Dr. Peter Prinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I know that some in this chamber are sceptical about the role of the other place. However, after dinner last night, I took some visitors into the House of Lords gallery at about 11 o'clock, and I was completely astonished to find the chamber full. And there was a very lively debate. So will he join me in recognising the great diligence of our colleagues in scrutinising legislation, but will he also agree with me that the House of Lords must not obstruct the will of the elected chamber?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my honourable friend adeptly points out, there is a fairly narrow tightrope to walk here, which is about ensuring that the House of Lords gets their opportunity to scrutinise legislation, whatever legislation happens to be, in the way that they are constitutionally set up to do. But also the concern that I know is shared amongst many members of this House about the effect that that can have, particularly when this place feels strongly about a particular issue, because he's referring to the assisted dying bill, I think, but also the fact that we passed that measure. And as I've said before at Business Questions, Mr. Speaker, I expect the upper house to take the fact that we, the elected house, supported that measure and other measures, to take that into due consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Leader of the House seriously think it is reasonable for the government to announce a new framework that will have a profound effect on Mid-Buckinghamshire and indeed through every constituency represented in this House, not least through the lens of food security, by written ministerial statement, rather than an oral statement where members on all sides and from all parties can scrutinise that? And I particularly ask him to reflect on that point through the lens of DEFRA questions continuing to be just 40 minutes rather than a full hour. Will he ask the Secretary of State for DEFRA to come and make a full oral statement?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I will bear the question or the request from the Honourable Gentleman. I will consider that. And I think he does make a point that others have made about whether DEFRA, given the circumstances in which we find ourselves, whether it's time to look at how much time departments get for questions, because that can change over a period of time, and we should make sure that that reflects that. But there's also a balance to be struck, Mr. Speaker, about what does come here in terms of oral statements, because there are important matters that this House has to debate. The question of how many oral statements that are necessary is a bit of a moot point, actually. And there are other ways in which the Honourable Gentleman can find out answers that he wants, other than waiting for the government for an oral statement. He can look towards asking for a Westminster Hall debate.
Just Southwell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many constituents have raised concerns about the restrictions on the Palestinian worshippers accessing the Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of Islam's holiest sites. They fear that the measures presented as security-related may be limiting freedom of worship and increasing control over access. These concerns sit alongside the wider humanitarian situation in Gaza, where reports indicate that hundreds have been killed and many more displaced since the ceasefire, though figures remain difficult to verify. Will the Leader of the House provide time for ministerial update on what steps the government is taking to protect civilians, uphold access to places of worship and support progress towards a two-state solution?
Thank you,
Leader.
Mr. Speaker. The UK strongly condemns the Israeli Security Cabinet's decision to expand Israeli control over the West Bank. We have called on Israel to reverse these decisions immediately and strongly condemn the increase in settler violence against Palestinian civilians. He will know that the government will continue to support the implementation of the Gaza peace plan and two-state solution. I will bear in mind what he says about ministers coming to this House, but over the past few months, Mr. Speaker, the government has not been shy on bringing forward statements on this very important matter.
Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My constituents live along what would have been a route for construction traffic for HS2 when it was proposed to continue up to Crewe. And because their daughter has a life-limiting condition, HS2 was requested by the Select Committee to buy their house so that their daughter wouldn't be adversely affected by dust and other pollution from that construction traffic. Since then, it's difficult to say that HS2 have behaved honourably in any way at all, and recently have actually reduced the value that they were willing to pay to my constituents on the estate agent's valuation, which is expressly forbidden as part of the agreement that they had with HS2. I know I'm not the only MP whose constituents have been poorly treated by HS2. So will he organise for a meeting with me, the other MPs affected and the relevant ministers so that we can discuss how to properly hold them to account to their commitments?
I will, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know whether the leader's preferred order is a single, a double or even a treble, but I hope he agrees with me that our pie and mash shops are an important part of this country's heritage. Unfortunately, Cockney's on Portobello Road has been threatened with a doubling of its rent, which would put them out of business. Over 3,500 of my constituents have signed my letter to the owner asking for a reasonable negotiation. So will he join me in paying tribute to our pie and mash shops and outline what support might be available from the government to protect these important community institutions and allow them to survive on our high streets?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I absolutely agree with my honourable friend that businesses like Cockney's are a valuable part of England's local and cultural heritage, and we must do all we can to support our traditional high street business. Let me confess, it may look as if mine is a double order, Mr. Speaker, but in reality it isn't. This government is, however, committed to supporting high streets and permanently low tax rates for 750,000 retail and hospitality properties. But I know this is a concern not just in my honourable friend's constituency, but in others too. So I would encourage him to apply for a debate to ensure that we can continue enjoying pie and mash.
You have it with Laker Leader. Andrew.
I have absolutely no doubt that the Leader of the House would have been joining all of us on Tuesday to celebrate St Patrick's Day, the 17th of March. And I'd like to thank Mr Speaker for hosting a St Patrick's Day celebration in Speaker's House. But what I would say is, where is the Ulster banner or the Cross of St Patrick flown from the Houses of Parliament? It's right that flags are flown for Wales, for Scotland and for England on patron saints' days, but no flag for Northern Ireland. So can we rectify that for next year? And also, will the Leader of the House ensure that we have a St Patrick's Day debate? We normally do in this chamber, and I think it's right that we should discuss the British-Irish relations, but particularly the negative effect of the Windsor Framework, which has divided our United Kingdom and is a democratic outrage.
I will raise this concern about which flags are flown and when, Mr Speaker, because the honourable gentleman is a doughty campaigner on that matter. On the wider issue of St Patrick's Day, I do join him in wishing everyone a happy St Patrick's Day and hope that they partied and enjoyed that time. I have to say, however, his loneliness on the bench with his new colleagues suggested whenever they party, they're somewhere else and he's never invited. But he's always welcome with us, Mr Speaker.
And Alicia Bidgley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Capita's management of the civil service pension scheme is a total disaster and the latest in a string of failures from them. My constituents are dealing with errors, delays and struggling to make ends meet, and we are rewarding them by handing them another multi-million-pound contract. So can we have a debate about preventing repeated awards to failing contractors and upholding Labour's manifesto commitment of the biggest in-source person in a generation.
Leader of the
Thank you,
House.
Mr Speaker. Now, I thank my honourable friend for raising this matter, and as she will know, it's been raised by other members too. The procurement process for this contract was undertaken prior to the recent issues with Capita around the civil service pension scheme, and our priority remains to ensure continuity of service and value for money for the public. I do recognise, however, her concern and the concern of members, and I'll make sure that ministers have heard her question.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Lough Eels Fishermen's Cooperative rely on a supply of glass eels to meet the regulatory commitments to be a sustainable eel fishery. But their supply from GB Rivers is now being blocked due to EU wildlife trade regulations. I'm aware this issue has now been raised with DEFRA by Labour MPs, Conservative MPs and Lib Dem MPs. My concern is for the sustainability of eel stocks in Lough Neagh and or eel fishermen. Could the Leader advise how it would be best to get a common sense positive resolution of this issue from DEFRA?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And the honourable gentleman raises a really important matter, I know, for his constituency and that part of the North of Ireland. We had DEFRA questions this morning, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I will make sure that the relevant minister is aware of the matter and get him an update. Once he's got that update, how to go forward with that, whether it requires a statement or indeed a debate, we'll decide at the time.
Mike Kane.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm sure the whole House agree that we could not do the job that we do without the hard work and dedication of our staff. With the Leader of the House joining with me in commending Mark Grayling, who's been with me for 5 years. He has worked for previous MPs before that. He's dedicated his working life to public service and good causes. He retires at the end of the month. The only blemish with respect to my neighbour from Altrincham and Sale West that we can find on his career is that he's a Norwich City fan. My team and I will miss him greatly. I'd like to hear from the Leader of the House.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And my honourable friend is absolutely right to congratulate Mark Grayling on his retirement. As we all know, Madam Deputy Speaker, the dedication of those who work behind the scenes is absolutely vital in supporting members in their duties, and Mr Grayling's long service exemplifies that commitment. So I'm absolutely delighted and to join my honourable friend in praising Mark's excellent work and wishing him a long and happy retirement.
Robbie Moore.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the fact that Cavendish Street in Keighley is to be upgraded thanks to the investment secured through the previous Conservative government's Towns Fund. But amongst the brilliant local businesses, the street is still home to several dodgy shops whom were stripped of their alcohol licences for illegal activity just last week. But they remain open and no convictions have followed. So will the Leader of the House grant a debate in government time so that we can discuss that when shops are found to be carrying out illegal activity, that they can be shut down and they can be placed with proper, law-abiding, independent businesses?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. These matters are often better decided locally because they depend on local circumstances. But if the honourable gentleman wants to go into greater detail and hear from the Minister in case the rules that exist are not being applied properly, I would encourage him to apply for a Westminster Hall debate.
Ian Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 8 months after the Prime Minister promised to call for evidence on Gabe's Law following the tragic death of 15-year-old Gabriel Santa, we are still waiting. Meanwhile, preventable deaths continue in multi-storey car parks. Companies like Q Park, despite multiple incidents and no statewide suicide prevention strategy, are still being awarded NHS contracts. Does the Leader of the House agree this is unacceptable? And will he commit to setting up a meeting with Gabe's father, who leads the campaign Gabe's Law, and the relevant ministers to discuss the prospect of government reviewing these contracts to ensure all operators who apply for government contracts meet consistent nationwide suicide prevention standards across all of their sites?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend is absolutely right to raise this very concerning matter. We do want to prevent future tragedies, and our thoughts remain with Gabe's family and friends. I will make sure that my honourable friend's concerns are drawn to the attention of the relevant minister and for the minister to decide about a meeting with my honourable friend and indeed Gabe's family so that these matters can be taken forward.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. For workers at Lindsay Oil Refinery in my constituency, the clock is ticking towards the end of this month when they will receive their final redundancy notice. We had a very useful meeting with the Energy Minister on site a couple of weeks ago, but I'm sure the workers would appreciate an update statement in open session where they can hear directly from the Minister as to what progress has been made since that meeting.
Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a important and concerning matter, and the Honourable Gentleman has been a key campaigner in supporting his constituents, but also those in the wider region. I will draw to the attention of the relevant minister, but it is Desna's questions next week. He may wish to hear from the minister directly, and if he wants to follow that up with a meeting with ministers and indeed others, then I'll help him to arrange that.
Alex Barras-Curtis.
Halifax, Barclays and, as of June, Lloyds Bank in Canton. Now, with these cumulative closures, a large part of my constituency will be left with extremely limited access to face-to-face banking services. I've met with Lloyds and I've written to Links to highlight my concerns about the lack of appropriate infrastructure to access cash and other banking activities, but have been very disappointed in their responses. So can I ask the Leader if government time can be allotted to debate the legislation that supports the important work of Link, and whether their mandate should be widened to consider not only access to cash, but all other relevant banking activities?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I thank my honourable friend for raising this matter, which again has been raised consistently, indeed by all parties, I think, across this House. And the government does understand the importance of face-to-face banking services, while we are committed to the rollout of at least 350 banking hubs, more than 210 of those are already open. I will ensure that the relevant minister has heard what my honourable friend has said today, and I would encourage him to apply for an adjournment or Westminster Hall debate, because I'm sure that others would want to join in and raise matters concerning their own particular constituencies.
Cameron Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I recently learned about the work of my constituent Claire Brown from Prestbury, who supports families with seriously ill children. She founded the charity Team Charlie, which raises funds to ensure families with sick children can take holidays, after having raised £200,000 to fund brain cancer treatment for a boy called Charlie, who sadly passed away just over 5 years ago. Team Charlie enables families enduring immense emotional strain to take a break from hospital appointments and build precious memories. Will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating Claire and those who contribute to Team Charlie?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I absolutely will, Madam Deputy Speaker, not only congratulate her on the work which she's doing, but thank her for the work that she's doing as well, because it is so important. And congratulate Team Charlie for everything that they do. As I have said on previous occasions, Madam Deputy Speaker, such work is the golden thread that runs through our communities. It is the best of our communities, and I thank Claire for that.
David Burton-Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Southend recently held its second City Day to celebrate and recognise us officially becoming a city on the back of the tragic murder of Sir David Amos. This year, the celebration stretched right across the city, including to Leigh-on-Sea in my constituency, a town filled with heritage and culture, and one I am backing to become UK Town of Culture 2028. Will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating Councillor Matt Dent and Councillor Daniel Cowan and the whole team at the City Council for their excellent work in delivering another brilliant City Day?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I need to be careful because I'm travelling back to my constituency later today. Oh, that's the plan. But I do absolutely join my honourable friend in congratulating everyone who contributed to making City Day such a huge success. And during these anniversaries, we are reminded of the important work that Sir David Amos did, and we remember him with respect and with fondness. And I wish all communities in seeking to be the town of culture, including Leigh-on-Sea, but also, I should say, North Shields in my own constituency.
Ian Sollum.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And appropriately following on, St Neots is the fastest growing town in Cambridgeshire, and our community-led festival has attracted 35,000 people in recent years, demonstrating the extraordinary cultural energy of the town. So with the UK Town of Culture Expression of Interest deadline falling on the 31st of March, will the Leader of the House find time when we return from recess for a debate on the competition so that members can champion fully their towns before the spring shortlist is announced? And, of course, so the government can hear exactly why St Neots should win.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The honourable gentleman is doing his job, of course, which is standing up for his constituency. I'll certainly look at the suggestion that he makes. There is a process, of course, which is underway. And as I say, I wish everyone seeking to get involved in that process all the very best.
Mary Glindon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A local pharmacy has contacted me regarding the need for a fast resolution to this year's settlement negotiations. The pharmacy's leadership tells me their wage, pension and national insurance costs will increase substantially in April, and as a result they are planning to reduce opening hours and make staff redundant. The sector is set to play a crucial role in the shift from hospital to community, but it remains under enormous pressure. So will the Leader ask the Minister for Care to update the House on when pharmacies can expect to see the new settlement and whether this will be ahead of the new financial year?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I thank my honourable friend and neighbour for raising this issue. She's a very strong voice for her constituency. The government is committed to improving access to community pharmacies. And this week we published the Neighbourhood Health Framework. But I will make sure that the relevant minister is made aware of my honourable friend's specific concerns, particularly on the request for an update by the end of this financial year.
Susan Murray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The development of the nuclear site at Wilva in Wales is set to bring thousands of jobs and revitalise the local community. A similar site near my constituency of Mid Dumbartonshire would play an enormous role in the shift away from oil and gas towards energy independence and bringing costs down. Will the Leader of the House ask the Minister of State for Energy to meet me to discuss Great British Energy's nuclear assessment of Scotland's nuclear opportunity?
I will do so, Madam Deputy Speaker, not least because the Honourable Lady points out that wherever these developments are happening, actually across the country, people are able to benefit from that, and in my constituency we're able to benefit from that. So I will seek to do as she asked.
Julie Minns.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Citadel Homes have issued demands for rent increases of over £200 a month in tandem with no-fault eviction notices to tenants in the Denton Home area of my Carlisle constituency. Those affected have done nothing wrong. Will the Leader of the House ensure that in the final weeks before the abolition of no-fault evictions, that ministers do all they can to ensure that landlords like Citadel Homes are held to account?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I thank my honourable friend for raising this important matter. We are committed to improving the system for 11 million private renters, and I am pleased that we're abolishing Section 21 no-fault evictions. But, as other members have said previously, there are concerns about what some more less scrupulous landlords may do in that. So I will raise it with that period. I will raise it with the Housing Secretary because I know that he is very much aware of MP's concerns.
Claire Young.
Mr. Speaker, the conversation continues in the nuclear industry about whether Wilva should have been reserved for gigawatt scale, leaving Oldbury for SMRs. The US ambassador has spoken publicly in the Daily Telegraph about his discussions with the government regarding Wilva's capacity for gigawatt-scale nuclear. I have tabled written questions on these representations, yet the government won't acknowledge that these specific conversations even took place. What avenues can the Leader of the House recommend to compel a proper answer from the government?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Honourable Lady is right to raise concerns because it's right that MPs get the information that they need on behalf of their constituents. So I will take it up with the relevant minister and seek to get the answers that she wants.
Ewan Sternbank.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I understand the bus manufacturing expert panel held its final meeting this week following Monday's release of the 10-year pipeline of zero-emissions buses. The next 5 years are pivotal for the ZEB market to deliver the buses we need. Especially crucial is further support for our British manufacturing sector, as 2025 saw foreign manufacturers obtain a majority market share of new registered zero-emissions buses for the first time. Would the Leader encourage Transport Ministers to make a statement to Parliament on these important developments?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We are committed to building a strong pipeline of future zero-emission bus orders, and the publication of the 10-year pipeline is a key milestone in this work and will boost British manufacturing. I'd encourage my honourable friend as a starter to raise his concerns at upcoming transport questions on the 26th of March, but I'll also raise with Ministers the prospect of updating the House in a statement should that be necessary.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Christian community in Pakistan throughout February 2026 continued to face grave injustices and targeted violence. Families were displaced, livelihoods destroyed, and many continue to live in fear for their safety and freedom. These ongoing persecutions underscore the urgent need for both national and international attention to safeguard fundamental human rights and ensure justice for victims. Can I ask the Leader of the House, please, to ask the Foreign Secretary to set out what representations the government has made to the government of Pakistan regarding these ongoing injustices, and what steps have been taken to raise concerns about freedom of religion or belief in Pakistan? Thank you so much.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as ever, the honourable gentleman raises a serious issue in a very responsible way, which we've come accustomed to. He knows that the UK is committed to defending freedom of religion and belief for all, and the persecution of Christians in Pakistan is unacceptable. Protecting freedom of religion or belief is central to the UK government's human rights engagement in Pakistan, and we are committed to working with communities and supporting programmes that promote greater tolerance and religious freedoms. I will draw his remarks this morning to the attention of the Foreign Secretary and make sure that he gets an update.
Douglas McAllister.
Western Bartonshire is one of 8 local authorities in Scotland fortunate enough to receive the UK Labour Government's Pride in Place immediate impact funding, £1.5 million to be spent this year, making a huge difference to local facilities, community groups and organisations right across Western Bartonshire. Now, one such recipient is Home Park Community Ground, £240,000 of funding to make improvements, and as a result, Clydebank Football Club received Bronze Award status yesterday. So will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating Clydebank Football Club and wish the Bankies all the best for the rest of the season?
I certainly will, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for raising this matter. It's great news for everyone in Clydebank, who are having, I understand, a great season, but it also demonstrates the importance of Pride in Place, because it's not just about providing money to invest in communities, it's about communities making the key decisions for themselves. And I hope that bronze status will help them with their future plans of moving up divisions in the Scottish Football League.
Emma Foodie.
Deputy Speaker, the issue of civil service pensions has been raised here repeatedly for months, yet Capita and my CSP are still failing, now on commitments that they made to put things right. Now, my constituents continue to receive only holding responses, some since December, despite serious financial hardship and mental health concerns. Retirements remain on hold, lump sum payments are not paid and self-set deadlines missed. Will the Leader arrange for an urgent statement on how the government can hold Capita to account for their repeated failure and how we ensure that civil servants are able to have dignity in their retirement?
Hear, hear, hear. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for raising this matter, as she acknowledges, which has been raised by many members, including today, but in the past few weeks and months, and it's clear that these delays are unacceptable. It's not a service that people deserve, and resolving it is a matter of utmost urgency, and the government acknowledges that. The Cabinet Office will continue to use all the available levers to hold Capita to account and ensure that they deliver on contractual service levels. Should she seek a debate on these matters, we already know there's enough people in this room who've raised them to actually have a debate, and then she can hear from the Minister about the progress which is being made.
Thank
you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The constituents of Wymondham, businesses and residents are sick to the back teeth of not having mobile phone signal for nearly a month now. The companies have fobbed us off with excuses, given no information about this happening. So can the Leader of the House help me secure a meeting with the relevant minister to raise my serious concerns about mobile phone companies not looking after their customers?
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the honourable gentleman will know, we are working with telecom companies to reduce poor mobile signal, particularly in rural areas. And we've announced the Shared Rural Network deal, which aims to deliver 4G coverage to 95% of all UK households, UK landmass rather, by the end of 2025. So I'm very sorry to hear of what is happening in my honourable friend's constituency. Should he seek a meeting with the relevant minister to vent his frustrations, then I will help him to arrange it.
Lorraine Beavers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituents in Thornton Clevelands have been shocked to learn that their homes are at high risk of contamination due to the presence of the forever chemical PFOA. Will the Leader of the House make the time for a debate on the need to make sure polluters pay for the clean-ups needed in cases like this?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend raises a very concerning matter. We are working hard to minimise the harmful effects of what I refer to, I think, as forever chemicals. But I'll make sure that the relevant minister does hear of my honourable friend's concerns and writes to her about the specific concerns that she's raised. And should she seek a meeting in the future, then I'll help her to arrange it.
Chris Blaw.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm sure the Leader of the House will remember with regret he was unable to join me and Gareth Gates in switching on the Christmas lights in Redditch last year. But it won't surprise him that Redditch has now launched its own Town of Culture bid. And no surprise, being the home of Royal Enfield, Bordesley Abbey, and being the birthplace of both John Bonham from Led Zeppelin and Grammy Award winner Harry Styles. So I know that the Leader of the House has to stay neutral in this process, but if he can't join me for a gluten-free toasty at the Boathouse Cafe on Arrow Valley Lake, will he join me in wishing Redditch all the best in their bid?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I have many regrets in my life, and it's definitely one that he refers to. I thank him for raising this matter, and I'll certainly consider a visit in the future, if not when Gareth Gates is there, then at some point in the future. But I do, as I've said, I wish all communities seeking to be a town of culture well, including, because I am remaining neutral in these matters, including North Shields and my own constituency.
Anna Gelder.
Whereas, Madam Deputy Speaker, people in South East Cornwall regularly contact me about serious concerns with poor property management practices like high service charges, limited accountability from managing agents, including Firstport. I'm also hearing from residents facing new admin fees from housing providers, including £66 to every household just to issue an invoice for grass cutting. Will the Leader of the House ask the Secretary of State from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government to provide an update on progress towards improving accountability for managing agents and protecting my residents from unfair charges?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend raises a concerning and serious matter. Our draft Common Hold and Leasehold Reform Bill will end the feudal leasehold system, and the measures referred to are not the final steps that we intend to take regarding the regulation of managing agents. And we will set out further details in due course. But I'll make sure that the relevant ministers hears my honourable friend's concerns and get her the update that she seeks.
Colin Rand.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I recently met my constituent Sam, who suffered life-changing injuries and lost a close friend when they were both hit by a silent falling tree in Sale in my constituency. The tree which fell on Sam had a visual tree assessment months earlier and was not scheduled for major safety work. Sam wants government action which mandates more thorough assessments of dangerous trees that go beyond purely visual assessments. So can the Leader of the House help me in seeking to take this campaign forward?
Madam Deputy Speaker, this sounds like a heartbreaking and frustrating situation for his constituents, and we wish Sam well in the future. DEFRA is updating the Local Authority Tree and Woodland Strategy Toolkit in 2026, which will include more detailed advice on health and safety and liability, which will help councils to strengthen their approach. But I will make sure that the relevant ministers heard my honourable friend's contribution today and provide him with an update on what our plans are.
David Williams.
Mr. Speaker, in Stoke-on-Trent we've had to declare a heritage emergency, and that really pains me. Across our towns we have the most beautiful historic buildings, but are lying empty because the restoration costs are so high. That's not down to a lack of local will, but a funding gap that no one stakeholder can close alone. So will the Leader of the House please make time for a debate to look into how government departments, funders and partners can work together to unlock investment and breathe life back into our remarkable buildings before it is too late.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for bringing this matter to the House because it is vital that we protect our heritage buildings. Earlier this year, Madam Deputy Speaker, we doubled our support for the Heritage at Risk Fund to £15 million, but I know there are still many across communities who are frustrated. It's also a matter of interest across the House, so I would urge my honourable friend to seek a Westminster Hall debate, not only to allow others to share in his concerns about their own constituencies, but to hear directly from ministers.
Deputy Speaker, last night there was an emotional farewell for Councillor Ashley Durnley, who attended his final full council meeting after an incredible 44 years of continuous service. Now, as a Conservative, Ashley could be described as an endangered species within our borough, but his decency, his courtesy and his integrity have won him widespread respect for his hard work for Wardle, Shaw and Littleborough West ever since he was first elected in 1982. So will the Leader join me in thanking Ashley for his services to democracy and wish him well in his retirement?
Madam Deputy Speaker, and I certainly join my honourable friend in congratulating Ashley for his remarkable service. 44 years of continuous service to his community is an incredible achievement, and I thank him, and indeed I thank other councillors, at whichever party they represent, when they reach such a milestone. I understand that Ashley quoted our dear friend Joe Cox in his farewell speech last night, and that we have more in common than which divides us, and that is a lesson that we should all take on board. So I thank Ashley for his service, and I wish him a very happy and peaceful retirement.
Joanna Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last week, like many others, I watched in horror as the Union Corner building in Glasgow succumbed to a devastating fire, having stood as an iconic landmark of Glasgow for over 175 years. It was thanks to firefighters like Crew Commander John Banach from Johnson in my constituency, who worked tirelessly to contain the blaze, safeguarding lives and preventing further catastrophic damage to Glasgow Central Station and the many historic buildings around it. Will the Leader of the House join me in paying tribute to John and the crews at the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for their remarkable and valiant efforts to contain this terrible incident?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I do pay tribute to John and indeed his colleagues. And I'm sorry to hear of the devastating fire, but firefighters did, as she said, act heroically to save Glasgow Central Station and many historic buildings that surround it, and indeed to contain that fire. So I join her in paying tribute to John and all the crews at Scottish Fire and Rescue Services for this work. But before I conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I also place on record my congratulations and thanks to my honourable friend.
Examples of this happening. The Lord Advocate